Hello, my fellow free thinker. You have accessed Renegade Files, your underground connection to paranormal events, unsolved mysteries, and deep cultural analysis. You are now in the company of outcasts, and I'm your host, Lex Gordon, reaching across the airwaves from the Jungle Villa outpost deep in the uncharted tropics. This is Renegade Files episode 101, The Sedona Portals, Vortexes, Time Slips, and High Desert Strangeness. Now, we venture to a place where the land itself seems to pulse with something unseen. Somewhere far from these humid tropics and into the dry, high desert of the American Southwest. A place that has drawn wanderers, mystics, scientists, skeptics, and explorers for decades. Where countless people claim that time bends, energy surges, lights appear in the skies, and reality itself feels a bit different, and most would say somehow better, more peaceful, and more hopeful. Today, we travel to Sedona, Arizona, a landscape carved from red stone and ancient whispers. To some, Sedona is a tourist haven, a sunny backdrop for crystal shops, guided meditation hikes, and sunset jeep tours. But beneath that casual surface lies another Sedona, older, much stranger, where stories accumulate like dust on canyon walls, and where visitors leave with questions they never expected to ask. This is the Sedona you and I will explore together, the one wrapped in myth, geology, and a persistent sense that something in those red cliffs is tuned in to a different frequency from the rest of the world. Sedona is famous for vortexes, where people claim the energy of the earth spirals up to influence mood, perception, and even consciousness. There are sightings of orbs, people experience time loss, and hear deep sounds from underground. Here, we'll explore strange stories, credible data, and unexplained events by looking into personal testimonies, scientific clues, and the unanswered questions that have shaped Sedona's reputation as a gateway into something unknown since the ancients walked here. So travel with me now as we explore the oddities in Renegade Files episode 101, The Sedona Portals, Vortexes, Time Slips, and High Desert Strangeness. Before we begin, I'd like to say a huge thank you to you if you are one of the cool listeners who has gone above and beyond to give Renegade Files Instagram page some love by liking, commenting, sharing, and following me there. Thank you so much for your help. Keep it up if you want to help lift the shadow ban there. I guess we're on our way. And rock on to you if you have checked us out on Instagram already. The crew really stepped up, and I thank you for being a part of it. Also, if you're a new RFA agent at the Patreon Recon Operative level, that's the $20 tier, the t-shirts are in and on the way. So look for that if you've given me your size already, or look for my note on Patreon where I'll be asking you what size t-shirt you'd like. And thank you so much to the RFA Recon Operatives. Wow, you seriously rock. Now, let's get into episode 101. Part 1. Geology and Spirit: What the Land and the First People Tell Us. Sedona's landscape did not become a place of mystery by accident. The towering red cliffs, iron-rich mesas, and winding canyons form an environment that has drawn attention for thousands of years, long before tourist maps and vortex trail markers appeared. When you begin with the geological and cultural foundations of this region, you find that both the land and the earliest locals have always had something unusual about them. To understand the modern idea of Sedona as a hotspot of strange energy or unexplained phenomena, it helps to trace back the story to the landforms, the magnetic properties of the rocks, and the ancient traditions that described this area as a location of heightened awareness, long before anyone used the term vortex. Sedona's geological history is one of upheaval, erosion, and ancient oceans that covered the region. The signature red color of the stones comes from iron oxide, the same compound that we find in rust. And this high iron content is one of the measurable qualities that investigators often connect to unusual magnetic readings. The layered cliffs contain thick beds of iron-rich sandstone, which can interact with magnetic fields in complex ways. Geologists document these iron deposits for study, and they map minerals, but modern researchers sometimes link these to electromagnetic fluctuations that appear on compass readings and handheld sensors. The presence of these fluctuations provides a physical starting point for understanding why Sedona might be so often associated with energetic anomalies. Add to this geological foundations of a long history of tectonic activity across the Southwest. Though Sedona isn't located on a major fault line, the region has experienced enough geological stress to create areas of fractured rock, mineral realignments, and isolated magnetic variations. These forces shape how iron deposits interact with the Earth's natural fields. Some investigators point to this combination of mineral composition and tectonic unrest as a possible explanation for the localized energy reports. Others argue that while geology may create some of the conditions, the experiences reported in Sedona often go far beyond what simple magnetic anomalies might explain. The debate continues, but the land itself clearly plays a role in why certain areas of Sedona feel so unusual. Long before modern visitors arrived, several Native American groups lived in and around what is now Sedona. The Yavapai and Western Apache have the most direct historical connection, with the Hopi, Navajo, and Zuni contributing broader southwestern traditions that help illuminate the ways different cultures may have viewed the region. While each tribe has its own distinct cosmology, there are recurring themes across their stories that describe the land as inhabited by powerful forces, spiritual presence, or beings associated with the sky. When viewed from a contemporary paranormal perspective, it's striking how certain motifs found in these ancient traditions resemble themes that appear in Sedona's modern reports of UFOs, time slips, and unusual experiences. The Yavapai and Apache regarded the Sedona region as a place of powerful earth spirits and transformative experiences. They recognized specific sites that seemed to heighten dreams, magnify visions, or create a sense of communication with the spirit world. These locations were often tied to the dramatic rock formations that now attract so many modern visitors. The towering spires, natural arches, and mesa tops were seen as gateways between the physical and spiritual worlds. In these ancient cultures, such locations were often reserved for vision quests, prayers, or seeking guidance. The experiences were understood within a spiritual framework, not a scientific or paranormal one. But the idea that the land itself influences perception goes back far earlier than the tourist brochures that now advertise the ideal meditation spots. You quickly see how this is connected. Hopi cosmology, cultural reach, and trade routes extended widely throughout the Southwest. Hopi oral traditions describe a world shaped by cycles, migrations, and interactions with spiritual beings from both the sky and the underworld. One key Hopi concept involves portals and openings between realms. These are described by the Hopi as energetic or spiritual pathways through which beings can travel or communicate, metaphysical doorways. When considered through the lens of modern paranormal investigation, these descriptions echo contemporary ideas about dimension shifts or locations where reality becomes altered. Navajo stories contribute another dimension to the Southwest's understanding of sacred places. The Navajo have long held that certain regions are inhabited by holy beings, guardians, or shape-shifting entities that move between the visible and the invisible worlds. These stories often emphasize respect for the land and caution against entering areas where powerful energies are believed to reside. Some of these locations have associations with lights, unusual sensations, or unexpected encounters, described in Navajo tradition as interactions with spiritual forces. When we read these stories today, it's interesting to note how the Navajo descriptions of glowing beings, sudden appearances, and altered perceptions strongly parallel so many modern paranormal experiences. The key is to approach these parallels respectfully, which is something I've always been mindful of with the Renegade Files content. I recognize that the Navajo worldview is its own complex system, and the only people to fully understand it are the Navajo who actually live it. But it's a good thing to seek out common ground across cultures and places. So when I find and point out interesting connections between modern experiences and ancient sacred descriptions, my intention is to start discussions and not to explain away with modern language the understandings of those who came before us or who are part of deep indigenous connections. If you've listened to Renegade Files for a while, then you likely know my respect and reverence for Native American and First Peoples spirituality and wisdom. I only mention this because some other ancient alien or UFO enthusiasts can be very quick to replace ancient descriptions with modern pop culture references, as if it's an obvious and foregone conclusion. None of us have the definitive answers, but my attitude is to respect both opinions and find common ground without dismissing something I have merely an academic understanding of. I know that you get that. I don't know who I'm talking to here. Maybe the new listener. And if that's you, sorry for the side quest, and let's get back into it. The Zuni, another Southwest native culture, holds traditions about the Kachinas, who are spiritual beings that act as messengers between the human world and a higher realm. Kachinas are associated with clouds, stars, mountains, and natural forces. In Zuni cosmology, these beings can appear in various forms and are likened to cycles of guidance, fertility, and protection. Some modern researchers note that certain Kachina stories include descriptions of glowing beings that descend from the sky, and they're seen by the Zuni as symbolic figures with deep religious meaning. From a contemporary paranormal standpoint, the concept of glowing, sky-dwelling beings visiting specific geographic areas parallels some of the broader UFO reports that ironically also happen very frequently in the Southwest, including Sedona. This is no different than interpreting the medieval Christian accounts of angels visiting Earth from heaven as something physically extraterrestrial. What stands out across these different indigenous traditions is a shared recognition that the land itself holds significant energy, meaning, and presence, and this can focus or become a destination, for whatever reason, for energies beyond our everyday experience. The Southwest has long been viewed as a place where natural forces and spiritual experiences blend. Sedona, with its rock formations, clear skies, and dramatic vistas, fits naturally into this pattern. When modern visitors describe sensations of heightened awareness or shifts in perception, it's worth remembering that earlier cultures also described experiences like this in this region, and thought of them as having profound spiritual resonance. But the concept of vortexes emerged more recently. The term gained popularity in the late 20th century, especially through New Age communities that settled in Sedona and began mapping out specific sites where people reported unusual sensations. Locations like Bell Rock, Airport Mesa, Cathedral Rock, and Boynton Canyon became known as vortex centers, based on repeated accounts from visitors. Some described feeling uplifted or grounded. Others reported tingling sensations or subtle shifts in mood. Over time, these reports created a network of accepted vortex locations that are still promoted today. Modern science has not validated the existence of vortexes as energetic spirals in the literal sense, but the experiences associated with these sites are not easily dismissed. Investigators using EMF meters, magnetometers, and other simple instruments have found anomalies in several of these locations. But much like the repeated experiences in a well-known haunted location, we can never fully discount the power of expectation. People who visit a famous haunted location late at night are primed for it. They expect, or even hope, to see or experience something paranormal. Sedona's locations of heightened spiritual connection could be similar. Yet, some fluctuations appear consistent with iron-rich stone formations said to interact with the Earth's magnetic field. These findings may not confirm the existence of spiritual or energetic vortexes in the New Age definitions, but they suggest that the land might produce localized phenomena that contribute to the sensations reported by visitors. Stories from early hikers, researchers, and locals often mirror the experiences now attributed to this vortex activity. Long before Sedona became a spiritual tourist destination, people exploring the region described odd encounters with floating lights, brief lapses in time, and moments where the environment seemed to shift somehow. Some hikers reported hearing faint tones with no discernible source. Others described brief flashes of light that illuminated canyon walls where no reflection should have existed. Some recalled walking a short distance only to feel as though much more time had passed than they realized. When these early experiences are compared with the ancient traditions of the region, the interesting picture starts to form. Indigenous stories describe the land as spiritually active. Modern visitors describe it as energetically unusual, and researchers measure small but real magnetic anomalies. Together, these layers create the foundation for the modern Sedona mystery. It becomes clear that the region's reputation didn't emerge randomly. The land has long been associated with heightened perception, unusual experiences, and encounters that challenge conventional explanation. The tribal cosmologies of the Southwest offer spiritual frameworks for interpreting this landscape, and modern paranormal reports offer perspectives of energy, time, and unexplained phenomena. The geological and mineral properties might influence things like the Earth's magnetic field, compass accuracy, and therefore perception. Sedona's mysterious locations are a combination of the interaction between land, culture, both ancient and new, and direct experience. As we move deeper into this investigation, the challenge becomes distinguishing what comes from the power of the landscape itself and what arises from purely human interpretation. The next step takes us into the modern accounts, the documented anomalies, and the ongoing reports that continue to shape Sedona's reputation as a place where time, space, and perception behave in unexpected ways. If you enjoy these investigations and want to help keep this independent show alive, join me in the Renegade Files Agency on Patreon. Your support there directly funds the research, writing, hosting, and production hours it takes to bring you episodes like this one, and it helps the show stay fiercely independent. A very small amount from you, less than you would tip a pizza guy, makes a huge difference to me. Every new agent gets bonus content, the dark intel files containing all of the research and photos and documents from every episode, and secret dispatches just for you. All of this only available to the RFA agents on Patreon. But more than that, you become part of the small group of listeners who make this work possible. If you believe in helping independent creators and in digging deeper, questioning the shadows, and keeping curiosity alive, then join me at patreon.com/renegadefiles. There's a link in the show notes. And become an agent today. Thank you to the agents there already. Seriously, you make this happen. Part 2. Encounters in the High Desert. As Sedona's reputation grew, so did the stories of the strange events reported throughout its canyons and mesas. The accounts come from hikers, researchers, pilots, and geology students. Many of the most compelling stories emerged before Sedona became synonymous with guided vortex tours. Many of these reports came during the years when the region was still a quiet desert town bordered by wilderness. These early accounts form a large part of what investigators now call the Sedona High Strangeness Archive, a collection of experiences that includes sightings of unexplained lights in the sky, shifts in perception, sudden time distortions, and encounters with what some describe as intelligent phenomena. One of the earliest recorded cases of unusual lights in the Sedona region dates from 1947. Right away, you probably recognize that auspicious date just like I did. 1947 is the same year that pilot Kenneth Arnold sighted a group of 9 UFOs traveling at an estimated 1,200 miles per hour while he was flying near Mount Rainier in Washington. His newspaper interview actually coined the term flying saucer, not because Arnold said he saw a flying saucer, but because he described the object as fluttering through the air, much like a saucer thrown and skipping across the surface of a lake. Not only this, but we also know that the Roswell incident happened within months of Kenneth Arnold's sighting. So here we have unusual lights reported in the skies over Sedona, Arizona, the famous Kenneth Arnold UFO report, and the alleged Roswell UFO crash, recovery, and cover-up, all happening in the same year, and all just 2 years after the very first nuclear weapons tests in New Mexico. So back to that first report from Sedona. Local rancher William Langford reported seeing a bright, silent sphere drift above the red rock formations near Bell Rock at dusk. Langford was not a mystic nor a seeker. By all historical records, he was a practical rancher whose primary concern was for his livestock, the weather, and the daily routines of land management. His report describes a glowing object, roughly the size of a car, moving smoothly across the sky before stopping in place for several seconds and then ascending rapidly until it vanished. Langford had no vocabulary for what he saw. He described it simply as a silent fire in the sky. When historians compare his account to modern sightings, the similarities are striking. A silent, luminous sphere, a smooth glide, a sudden vertical ascent. Today, these characteristics match countless reports of aerial anomalies seen all across the Southwest. Another well-known early case occurred in 1967, when a geology student from Northern Arizona University, Ellen Klein, visited Sedona to study the Laird Sandstone formations. According to her field notes, which remained hidden in university archives for decades before being rediscovered, she witnessed a column of light appear along the ridge of Cathedral Rock just after sunset. Ellen Klein described the light as narrow, pale blue, and roughly 20 feet tall. It pulsed 3 times, then disappeared. The following day, she returned to the same site to examine the area for reflective minerals or metallic deposits, but she found nothing. It's interesting that her description of a 20-foot-high, narrow, blue beam of light matches almost exactly the beam described by the witnesses to the Travis Walton abduction, which also happened in Arizona in 1975. That's an awesome story, and you can check it out fully in Renegade Files episode 57, Betty and Barney Hill versus Travis Walton, an abduction analysis. The incident bothered Ellen Klein enough that she would mention it to her geology professor, who dismissed the report in favor of atmospheric explanations. Yet, when researchers revisited the location with her notes decades later, they found that other hikers had reported similar columns of light near Cathedral Rock in the late 70s and early 80s. No reliable geological explanation has been proven to explain these vertical light columns. Some of the most unsettling reports from Sedona involve glitches in time. These experiences often follow a similar pattern. A person steps briefly off a trail, becomes distracted by something unusual in the environment, and then discovers that far more time has passed than they realized. One of the better documented cases comes from 1978 when a pair of hikers, Robert and Janet Holloway, were exploring Boynton Canyon. The Holloways left the main trail to examine a side ravine where Janet had spotted what she thought was a strange glow in the rocks. The couple only walked 10 or 15 yards into the ravine, looked around for about 5 minutes, then returned to the main trail. When they rejoined the path, they were surprised to see that the sun had dropped much lower in the sky than they expected. Another hiker who had stopped nearby then told them that they had been in the ravine for nearly 2 hours. Their watches showed that only 20 minutes had passed. Neither suffered dehydration or confusion, and both described the ravine as being unusually silent while they were in it. They could hear no wind, no birds, and even their own footsteps and gravel sliding as they walked was strangely muted. Other similar experiences have been reported over the years, and they appear often enough in the region to form a pattern that investigators continue to examine. Another phenomenon closely associated with Sedona's high strangeness is the sudden shift in sound or atmospheric pressure that some hikers describe. These moments are reported as sudden pockets of utter silence, as though ambient noise is muted or absorbed by the environment. We just mentioned that in the ravine time slip. In a 1983 case, park ranger Thomas Avery reported an experience near the base of Bell Rock. Avery was experienced in desert acoustics and knew how sound behaves in canyons. During a routine patrol, he noticed that the sound of wind and insects abruptly stopped. The silence lasted long enough for him to become uneasy. Then he heard a deep, resonant tone that seemed to vibrate through the rocks. The tone persisted for several seconds, then faded away. The ambient noise returned as if someone had flipped a switch. Avery described the incident in his logbook, but did not file an official report because he believed it might trigger unwanted scrutiny. Years later, when interviewed by a researcher compiling unusual experiences in the region, the park ranger finally shared his full account. The logbook entry helps confirm the date and location of the event, but the cause of the acoustic shift remains unknown. Scientific interest in Sedona's anomalies increased during the 1980s, when portable magnetic and electromagnetic field sensors became more accessible. Independent researchers, amateur scientists, and a handful of academic teams visited these reported vortex sites with instruments, hoping to measure something that might correlate with the experiences that people were describing. In 1987, a research group from the University of Colorado conducted measurements around Airport Mesa, a vortex hotspot. They found and documented significant irregular magnetic fluctuations, which might be expected where iron deposits are high. But the strange thing was, the irregular readings didn't coincide with any unusually high mineral deposits. Their findings were never widely publicized for two reasons. One, the research team couldn't determine a cause for the anomalies, and two, the data didn't fit neatly into any established geological theory or previous experiment. This is one example of how our modern university-driven sciences have lost the plot of actual science, as it were. Any discovery that doesn't fit neatly into established theories and evidence is swept under the rug. University academic science is often just an echo chamber that only reports findings that match previous findings, which is the exact opposite of scientific. Encounters with unusual lights continue to be the most common reports from Sedona. In the early 1990s, a wave of sightings brought renewed attention to the region. Many residents described bright orbs that hovered above the mesas or drifted slowly across the night sky. A series of sightings in 1992 were captured on early consumer camcorders, producing grainy but compelling footage of luminous spheres that moved in ways inconsistent with known aircrafts. Witnesses from that period often described the lights as behaving intelligently, responding to the environment as they moved, or seemingly following a deliberate path. Several residents claimed to see multiple lights moving in coordinated patterns or pausing in formation directly above known vortex locations. These reports aligned with other sightings across the Southwest, and some investigators consider Sedona part of a larger corridor of UFOs stretching from Nevada to Mexico. This is serious UFO territory for sure. Any discussion of aerial anomalies in Arizona inevitably connects us to the Phoenix Lights events of March 13, 1997, one of the most significant mass UFO sightings in modern history. More than 10,000 people across the state witnessed a massive V-shaped formation of lights moving silently through the night sky. That event is covered in detail in Renegade Files Episode 9, The Phoenix Lights UFO Event, which remains one of the clearest examples of a large-scale UFO sighting consisting of thousands of consistent reports across an entire state. The event reinforced the idea that Arizona as a whole is a region of intense aerial activity, and Sedona's long history of unexplained lights fits naturally within this broader pattern. One of the more dramatic Sedona-specific cases occurred in 1995 when a group of campers near Oak Creek reported an encounter with a glowing sphere that approached their campsite at approximately 2 a.m. According to their statements, the sphere emitted a soft white light and hovered less than 50 feet away. The campers described feeling a pressure in the air, similar to the sensation of standing near a powerful speaker emitting a low-frequency bass tone, though they heard no sound. After several seconds, the sphere rose quickly and vanished into the night sky. The campers reported the event to local authorities, who found no physical evidence at the site. However, the consistency of the witness statements and the absence of any official aircraft in the area has made that case one of the more credible accounts on record. Sedona researchers also document a recurring phenomenon known as the shadow boundary effect, where the border between sunlight and shade appears unusually sharp or distorted. Some hikers describe stepping from sunlight into a shaded area and feeling the environment abruptly shift, almost like walking through a doorway from outdoors to in. These moments often coincide with reports of tingling sensations, dizziness, or a brief feeling of disorientation. Hikers have also reported seeing shadowy figures or silhouettes in their peripheral vision. When nearby, these shadow beings are typically described as fleeting and vanish when observed directly. But some have reported watching shadowy figures climbing high in the rocks above them. These distant shadow hikers seem to linger longer, and some have watched them for several minutes. In 2004, a photographer named Daniel Mercer claimed to capture one of these shadow figures on film while shooting long exposure images near Boynton Canyon. The photograph shows a faint humanoid shape partially obscured by a rock formation. Skeptics argue it's a motion blur artifact from the long exposure, while others believe it might represent one of the shadow entities reported by so many witnesses. Mercer has always insisted that he saw no one else in the area at the time the photo was taken. Sedona's anomalies also include reports of electrical interference. Visitors sometimes describe phones or cameras malfunctioning in specific locations, only to function normally once they leave the area. These malfunctions are not consistent enough to form a clear pattern, but they appear often enough in the same areas as these vortex and magnetic fluctuations, so some researchers think the electromagnetic disturbances might be interfering with these electronic devices. It's possible. What makes all of these high strangeness reports compelling is their consistency across decades. And as we have seen, going all the way back to the Native American tribes in the area. Whether the stories come from the indigenous people, ranchers in the 40s, geology students in the 60s, hikers in the 70s, or researchers in the 80s, all the way up to the present day, the themes remain remarkably stable. Unexplained lights, sudden silence, distortion in time perception, shadow figures, and strange atmospheric events. The experiences differ in detail, but share a common structure that suggests more than imagination or coincidence. Sedona's reputation as a place of unusual phenomena exists because of these recurring experiences. Some can be explained scientifically, but others can't. History, geology, and the human mind combine to draw lines between mysteries and experiences. As investigators continue to explore the high desert, the stories keep accumulating, each one adding to Sedona's intrigue. Part 3. Classified currents and hidden patterns. As Sedona's reputation expanded beyond local stories and into national awareness, another thread began to weave itself into the region's strange reports. Suddenly, unexplained aerial behavior involving recognizable crafts joined the chat. Unexpected squadrons of military aircraft overhead, black helicopters, and unauthorized airport flyovers started to occur near the vortexes where UFOs and time distortions were most commonly reported. Sedona isn't near a major military base, nor is it positioned within an active military corridor. Yet, for decades, residents have described encounters with aircraft that appeared to be showing up without warning, moving in patterns inconsistent with routine flights, and vanishing as quickly as they appear. These encounters form the backbone of what some investigators refer to as Sedona's hidden data problem. The information exists, but in fragments scattered across eyewitness testimony, aviation logs, and atmospheric records. None of it alone proves anything, but the cumulative effect suggests that Sedona attracts more attention from governmental and technical agencies than its quiet desert setting would warrant. One of the earliest documented events was in 1976, when several residents near the village of Oak Creek reported seeing a formation of black helicopters hovering and sweeping low over Bell Rock. We've heard of that before. This was just before sunrise. The helicopters made no identifiable sound, which struck all of the witnesses as unusual. Several described the aircraft as moving in a coordinated pattern, as though scanning the terrain below. No official exercises were scheduled in the region at the time, and the closest bases reported no aviation activity matching this description. The sighting was never explained, though researchers later noted that the formation appeared directly over one of the most active vortex sites in Sedona. Then, in 1990, multiple witnesses saw and reported bright orbs moving silently across the daylight sky near Boynton Canyon. They described 6 objects forming a linear formation of UFOs that moved in unison, separated to swirl around or vanish, and then reform and proceed beyond the hills out of sight. Minutes later, many of these same witnesses saw and reported a group of silent black helicopters following the same path. Investigators found no official flight records of helicopters matching the times of the sightings. As with many Sedona anomalies, the events remain unexplained. Whether these aircraft were part of a classified response or simply a coincidental dispatch is unknown. What stands out is that similar patterns appear in other parts of the Southwest known for aerial anomalies, including regions in New Mexico, Utah, and Nevada. The correlation between vortex zones and reports of recognizable but unaccounted for aircraft has become one of Sedona's most persistent mysteries. There's also a matter of radio interference. Some hikers and researchers report brief losses of communication when near certain vortex zones. These interruptions only seem to last seconds, but are frequent enough to be noted. A geologist working in the region in 1999 recorded intermittent static bursts on his handheld radio while surveying an area near Airport Mesa. The bursts occurred at specific points on the trail, and then ceased when he moved beyond them. He initially assumed there must be some hidden equipment or structural wiring beneath the surface of the ground, but subsequent investigations found no such infrastructure. While radio interference can have many explanations, the recurring nature of these events near vortex locations just adds another piece to the puzzle. The military interest in Sedona may not be limited to helicopters. In 2001, a pilot flying a small private aircraft over the region reported being instructed by air traffic control to divert around a temporarily restricted airspace that appeared with no warning. The restricted zone covered a portion of the land west of Cathedral Rock and remained active for several hours. No public explanation was ever given for this restriction. Pilots familiar with the area noted that temporary flight restrictions are rare in regions without major military activity, leading to speculation that the airspace may have been closed to monitor or respond to a UFO crash. And the overlap between ancient legends and modern experiences adds another dimension here. As covered earlier, the cultures of the Southwest told stories of sky beings, portals, spiritual gateways, and places where earthly life and the afterlife crossed paths. The Hopi traditions about energetic openings between worlds echo the modern idea of vortexes as sites of altered perception. Navajo accounts of beings who could shift between forms resemble these fleeting shadow figures reported near certain Sedona trails. Zuni teachings about sky-associated messengers recall some of the more luminous aerial phenomena witnessed in the region over the last century. The Navajo stories of the skinwalkers describe beings who were shapeshifters, appearing as a man one minute and a monstrous mix of man and wolf the next. We did an episode on the skinwalkers too, check it out. This tradition occurred within the context of its specific time, a time when natural creatures such as wolves were common not just in the landscape, but in the minds of the storytellers and the listeners. What if the sightings today of something seemingly impossible, like a silent black helicopter, are connected to these ancient energies and have simply been given new forms by the observers? Modern-day witnesses see machines, where the elders saw apex predators. These correlations suggest that Sedona and the surrounding lands have long been perceived as a place where unusual experiences are common. Indigenous cosmologies frame these experiences as spiritual or symbolic, and modern investigators attempt to understand them as physical anomalies or encounters with the unknown. The interpretations differ, but the patterns share a common thread of human perception responding to something unusual in the environment. In fact, in the early 2000s, two Sedona researchers, Elaine Porter and Victor Halloran, attempted to map the relationship between vortex locations, Native American sacred sites, and clusters of modern aerial sightings. Their project, known informally as the Halloran Grid, found that several major vortex locations aligned closely with areas traditionally regarded as spiritually significant by indigenous cultures. Their map also showed that many of the most credible aerial sightings of UFOs occurred within this same geographic band. Although their work was not published in a scientific journal, it remains one of the most comprehensive attempts to visualize these overlapping layers of Sedona mysteries. What remains most compelling is how the stories, the geology, the seeming military activity, and the cultural traditions all converge. Each in isolation might be easy to dismiss. Coincidence, exaggeration, misinterpretation, but together they form a composite portrait of a region where unusual things are part of the landscape. The challenge for investigators is determining how much of the mystery comes from natural forces, how much arises from human perception, and how much comes from phenomena that remain unidentified. Sedona's enduring mystery lies in this intersection of the ancient and the modern, the physical and the spiritual, the documented and the unexplained. The high desert continues to generate sightings, encounters, and fields of inquiry that stretch far beyond conventional understanding. Whether these encounters represent geological anomalies, atmospheric effects, classified operation, or something that defies all established categories, Sedona remains one of the most enigmatic locations in America, and maybe in the world. My summary. Sedona stands as a reminder that some landscapes shape human experience in ways that resist easy explanation. The red rock country of northern Arizona carries a presence that people feel long before they try to interpret it. When you examine Sedona's mystery across geology, indigenous tradition, scientific curiosity, and personal testimony, a pattern emerges that is larger than any single perspective. Culturally, the Southwest is home to some of the most profound and intricate cosmologies in North America. The Hopi, Navajo, Zuni, Yavapai, and Apache, all these traditions have ideas about places where spiritual forces gather, where boundaries between worlds become thin, or where interactions with beings from the sky are a part of real history. Scientific observations measure magnetic fluctuations, atmospheric anomalies, and intermittent radio interference in areas surrounding Sedona's best-known vortex sites. These findings point to environmental variables that behave differently from the norm. In these same locations, perception becomes more fluid and experience becomes more subjective, yet no less real to the people who encounter it. The testimonies from those who have spent time in Sedona describe sudden silence, time slips, UFOs, and encounter with modern machines that do unexpected things. Sedona is not merely seen but sensed, and something in the land engages with people in ways that just can't be measured. One of the most compelling aspects of Sedona's mystery is how it bridges the divide between the ancient and the modern, and connects our interpretations of the unknown. The stories told by indigenous cultures describe the land as a meeting point of forces beyond the everyday world. The accounts shared by contemporary visitors echo that same sentiment through modern ideas about energy, time, and aerial phenomena. As the sun sets behind the red cliffs and the high desert grows silent, Sedona continues to gather stories. It persists as a living phenomenon shaped by geology, culture, environment, and human experience. A place where questions feel bigger than answers, and where the unknown still feels close enough to touch. Thank you sincerely for investigating Sedona's high desert strangeness with me. The most 3 recent episodes, The Shadow Internet, The Montauk Project, and now this one, Sedona, have been very interesting, but nebulous and vague as far as what's really going on. That's just sort of the way mysterious subjects are sometimes. They can be really fun to do, and people do like these episodes for sure. But we do reach a point where it's time to come back down to earth and get into something more concrete. If you've started to feel like that in the face of all this woo-woo weirdness lately, well, have no fear. Next week, for episode 102, we're diving deep into a dark chapter of modern American history as we thoroughly investigate the siege at Ruby Ridge. This incident ignited serious debates about personal freedoms, federal overreach, and forbidden self-reliance, while revealing shocking interconnections of multiple people involved who would go on to make appearances at Waco, the Oklahoma City bombing, and other watershed tragedies, all combining to point to a deep state conspiracy of aligned interests. Tap follow right now on the app you're listening with so we can meet here next Wednesday and investigate the siege at Ruby Ridge. If you like these episodes, help me keep this independent show alive by joining the Renegade Files Agency on Patreon. Your support there directly fuels the production costs of the show so we can explore these mysteries together. Every new RFA agent on Patreon gets bonus content and more, but more than that, you become part of the small crew of dedicated listeners who make this show possible. If you believe in digging deeper, questioning the narrative, and keeping truth alive, then visit patreon.com/renegadefiles. There's a link in the show notes. And become an RFA agent today. And to those of you who are already supporting the show there, thank you so much. You make this work possible. I am so glad to have you in the Renegade Files crew. Until next week, I'm your host, Lex Gordon. Stay wild, Red Rocks child.